Hello everyone, my name is Shambhavi. Hope you all are doing well. So basically, now today we are going to discuss about the thread synchronization. We are going to see that what does this term actually means, that what is the definition, what does it actually do, and after that we'll be seeing an example, a program for the thread synchronization which we have under the threading module, right? So let's begin here. Let's not waste out too much of time and let's see that what are these terms actually. Right. So let me start on with the thread synchronization. So basically, thread synchronization is defined as a mechanism which ensures that two or more concurrent threads do not simultaneously execute some particular program segment known as critical section. So this is a definition about the thread synchronization. So basically, it is defined as a mechanism which makes sure that two or more concurrent threads do not execute simultaneously at a particular program segment, okay, and this whole situation is actually called as a critical section. Now let's understand what is a critical section now. So basically, the critical section actually refers to the parts of the program where the shared resources exist, right? Now, the part of a program where your, let's say you have shared a resource, right? At that particular part of a program where you have shared a particular resource and that is exist. So that part is actually called as a critical section of the program. Right, so this is about the synchronization, thread synchronization and the critical section. Now, basically, I hope if you just read out a definition for thread synchronization once again, then you'll be getting the more clear thing that it is basically defined as a mechanism which ensures that two or more concurrent threads, okay, please make sure here to remember these little words that are actually written here, okay, that two or more concurrent threads do not simultaneously execute some particular program segment known as critical section. Okay, so basically it is if I just try to say it like this, that it is defined as a mechanism which makes sure that two or more concurrent threads do not basically simultaneously execute at some particular program segment where the resources is shared, okay, where the resources the shared resources are actually exist. If I do not want to use a critical section here, so in that I can just get out the definition for the critical section and I can just add it there. Right, I hope now you have got a fairly and a clear idea about the thread synchronization. Now basically let's write out a program here now. Before that, moving on to the program, basically we had two things in this thread synchronization. One is a lock and another one is the acquire. Acquire and the lock, these are the two things which we have in thread synchronization. Okay, right, now let's see that how to use them in the programming. So very first thing, I'm just going to write a program for the thread that will include the threads. So for that, I'm just importing here the threading. Basically, previously we used to write import threads, but in Python 3 that threads do not work. Okay, import threads do not work. So we need to import the threading module here. Okay, right here. Okay, I would just write here, let's say lock. Okay, lock that I was talking about, the lock and acquire, okay, is equal to, and here I would be adding threading dot, and here would be right here, and here would be lock and the brackets like this. Okay, so this lock and is a function which I am having here, and this is one of my variables which I have made. Okay, and basically I'll be using out my functions and the main function for writing out this threading program. Right, so in this basic thread synchronization, I would be using out my threading and I would be using out my main functions. Okay, right here. So I would be defining out my first function def, and let's say my first function is 1. Okay, I would just write it like this. Okay, now let's say I just applied a for loop for I in range, and let's say into the bracket I just wrote here 4. Okay, so for I in range and in the bracket I just wrote here 4. Right, I would just use out that log, the variable which I had made, and here I would just using my acquire function which I was talking about. Right, so log dot acquire. Right, now into my print statement, I'm just using out my print statement here, and inside that print statement, let's say I'll just write that log has been acquired. Okay, like this. Okay, so this is the statement which is wanted to print here, that log has been acquired, right? Now, let me just come on to the next line. And after this, I just want to write out the function, one another statement that is basically executing. Okay, I will just write it like this: that one function is being executed. Okay, let me write out this statement that one function is actually being executed, right? And here I'm just using lock dot release. Okay, so acquire and release, these are the two things, not that lock, that was not the one, that was a variable, that was another function. Acquire and release are the two things which are actually here. Okay, acquire means to capture, release me to let that go off, right? These are the two things which come here, right? So I just wrote lock dot release. Now basically what I would just do, I would define out my second function here. So let me write def and let me write as 2. Okay, this is defining of my second function. Come on to the next line. Let me first of all calm down so that I can just write properly. Right, I would again apply my for loop. So it is basically for I in, and I'm writing the range, and into the bracket I'll be writing, let's say 4, the same number which I had taken on the above example. Right. So for I in range, into the bracket it is 4. Here again I'll be just using log dot a single dot, and here I'll be log dot acquire. Okay, and the brackets like this, right? Now into the print statement I'll be again writing the same which I have written above. Let me check out that one. So okay, this was lock has been acquired, right? Let me write that lock has been acquired. Okay, so not like this, it is basically like this, right? No, so basically lock has been acquired, right? I would just come on to the next line. And now again applying my print condition, and into that I'll be just writing print, and here would be that what is the name for my second function? 2, right? So I would just write that 2 function is being executed, right? Like this. Okay, come on to the next line now. Let me just code this back here. Right, this is done, and after this I would just write log dot, and here we go out the release, log dot release, and the brackets like this. Right, this is all done regarding the programming. Now basically comes my main function, and inside that main function I'll be calling out my functions and using the start and the join functions. Okay, let's do that thing. So here I'll just write main and hit enter. So I just got my statement, that is if name is equal to main, and yes, in Python programming this is the main function which we have, right? Now basically I'll be making a variable, let's say that is t1. Okay, t1 is equal to, now with the help of the threading module I would be using the threads here. So with the help of the threading module I would use thread, and into the bracket I'll be giving the parameter which is target, and inside that parameter I'll be calling out my first function, that is 1, right? This 1 is the name for my function. Second, I would be again doing the same thing. t2 is a variable is equal to, here I'll be using the threading module again, and with the help of threading module I'm using the thread here, and into the bracket I'll be writing, let's say target is equal to 2, right? So target is my 2, so function 1 is my target above 1 and 2 is the down one, right? Now basically I would just try to start the thread, right? So for starting, what we just do, we just write t1 dot start, and I would just put out the bracket here. Same procedure, t2 dot start, and again I would just put out the brackets here. After that I would just write t1 dot join. This actually means that first for execution of my first of the thread has been finished, then move on to the second one. And here again t2 dot join, and here I just close out the brackets, right? So I just wrote out the whole program. Let me just go through the program once, and let's shut down the program. So I just imported out my threading module. After that I had made out a variable, that is lock. Okay, into that basically with the help of the threading module I have used out this lock function. After that I just made one of my functions, so the name for that particular function is 1. I applied a for loop inside this, so for I in range, so all of these things which are written, that will be executed 0 1 2 3 times. Okay, after that basically I just made out my 2 function, and inside that also I just wrote out sentences, some print statements, and applied some functions, and even applied my for loop. So statements will be running till the 4, right? And then inside my main function I just called out my functions in one another variable with the help of the threading module and the thread function, and after that I simply use the start and the join ones. Right, now I would just run out my program quickly here, run. So basically now I have a look that what I have got here as an output. So I just got lock has been acquired, one function is being executed. So basically see, till this particular point I am getting that lock function has been acquired, one function is being executed. Okay, this is the whole place where I'm just getting with the first function. And now this time basically 1, 2, 3 and 4. As I mentioned, it will go from 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So these 4 places, that is total my 8 statements, right? In this basically, okay, that is around my 7, right? So according to this, basically here I am just getting the answers that are basically for the two function which we have written here, right? So we had taken the two functions, function 1 and function 2, and according to that only basically we will be getting the answer, right? So okay, just let me show you where it was actually. Yeah, so here was the printer statement, that is lock has been acquired, right? And here was the another printer statement, that is one function is being executed. So because of that, here in the above places I'm just getting the same thing. Okay, now after that, inside my 2 1 I have written lock has been acquired and two function is being executed. So because of that, in the down place after 8 I'm just getting this particular 2 1, right? So so this is basically how we just do the thread synchronization in the lock function. Okay, lock is one type of function that we have in the threads, right? Under the threading module we have this function which is lock. Now today we are going to see that how we use out this lock function for doing out the thread synchronization, for applying the synchronization threading. Right, this is the whole idea that we are gonna discuss today, right? So basically let's get started here without wasting lot much time. Okay, so the very first thing is that I'm just going to make my threads, right? So in that case, basically what I need to do is that I need to import out the threading module, right? This is the very first step that I would actually do, because here I'm dealing with the basically the threading, the thread I'm just going to make the thread. So in that case, we need to import out the threading module, right? So basically I would just write here import, and here goes the threading. Okay, import threading. This is basically how we just write out the threading module. And under this threading module, we just use out the threads for writing out our program. Right, now after that, I would even import the time module, because I'll be using the time module throughout my program to basically write out my code. Okay, so in that case, I'm importing the time as well, right? So here in this program, I'll be using out the classes and the functions. Okay, these are the two things that I'll be using here. So let's make a class here. So here I would define class, and let's see the name for my class. So let's say 1. Okay, this is the name for my class, and into the bracket I'll be making my thread. So the procedure is I'll be using my threading module which I have imported above. Okay, I'll be putting a dot here, right? And after that I'll be writing here threading dot and thread. Okay, so T would be capital for the thread, like this. Okay, this is how I have made out my thread inside this class, that is 1, right? Now moving towards the next things what I have. Again, I'll be using out this threading module and using the thread from this particular module and initializing it. Okay, but before that, let me just initialize the function, that is def underscore underscore init. So here we go with this particular function, and into the bracket self will be passed. Now basically I'm just going to pass out the parameters which I want to be inside my function, right? I'll be passing out some arguments inside my function. So I'll be putting out a comma here, and let's say my first argument is id. Sorry, not id, let's say it is the marks. Okay, after that, let's say my another argument is name, and let's say my third argument is count. Let's say these are the three arguments which I actually have. Right, now basically I'll be using here threading dot, and here will be my thread. Okay, threading dot thread, and into the okay, I'll just again put a dot here and just initialize it. So initializing procedures underscore underscore init, and into the bracket I'll be writing here the self, right? This is the way how we just initialize out this thing, right? As I have just written out here, right? Let me just come down, fine. Now with the help of myself, I'll be accessing all of these things which I'm having here, right? So self dot marks. Okay, self dot marks is equal to marks. After that, it will be self dot name is equal to name, and after that, I'll be having self dot counter is equal to counter. Right, this is how actually we just initialize all the things. So this is how we just make out the variables and give the particular values to these variables. Right, that thing I have done here, fine. Now, as we always know, and I've always repeated always this thing, that basically whenever we just make any function inside the class, or whenever we just want to run anything out inside that, we are passing something that we just want to print as an output. So that function name will always remain the name, that is run, run, right? Run. We always keep the function name this only. Right, so in that case, I just write here def and here goes the run. Okay, and into bracket self will automatically be passed, right? Def run and into the bracket it is self. Right, now basically what I'll be just doing is that I'll be writing here a print statement. Okay, so I'll be writing here the, okay, I will just write here the start, okay, so STAR, the starting name is, and here we put out a plus sign, and after this I'll be writing here self dot name. So as previously also I mentioned that if we just want, we can either use a print statement or we can even use the f strings as well, right? That totally depends on you, that what you want to use. So let's say previously I was using a f strings, now I have just used out the print statement so as to show you that how to we can just write out the print statement and the f strings as well, right? Now next thing that goes here is that now basically I'll be using one function, that is thread lock. Okay, thread lock dot, and here I'll be applying the acquire, AC uh, yeah, ACQUIRE, like this. Okay, this is the thing that I'm just writing here, threadlock dot acquire. Okay, this threadlock will be one of my functions which I'll be making downside. Okay, just do not worry for that. I'll be defining out a function with this name. Okay, then basically I'll be getting sorry, I'm defining out a variable with this name. At that place will be getting out this thing. Okay, so till that particular point it will be showing me this red line only. Okay, so like this. So now acquire is actually a function which we actually use when we want to, when you want to get log the synchronized threads. Okay, when you want that the synchronized thread should be logged, so in that case basically we just use out this acquire. Okay, so I would just come on to the next line. Here I'll be again using out my print statement. Okay, now I'll be writing out a function name. That function I'll be defining downside. Okay, so here would be declare, okay, that would be declare underscore time. Okay, like this, right? And let me just do one thing. Okay, first of all, let me remove out this one from here. And let me come down and define this function as well here only. So that is a def declare underscore time. Okay, this is how we'll be defining out this function. This is the same one. Okay, and simply I would pass it. Fine. Declare underscore time is defined now. Now you just got that what I was saying from declare underscore time. This is one of the functions which I'll be making downside. Okay. So into this I'll be just writing bracket. It would be basically self dot. Now basically what are the parameters? It was name. I was having self dot name. I was having self dot I was even having the counter, and even I was having the mark. So let's say that is 2. Okay, let's say that is 2. Fine, that is defined here. Now basically what I would just do, now I would free out the locks to release so that it can basically go on to the next thread. So basically first of all here when I just use out the acquire function, so it basically helped me to get the lock to synchronize the thread. Now I'll be using some another function, and that is basically the release function. So that is basically used for free lock to release next thread. Okay. So here basically I'll be just writing thread. Again I'll be just writing lock dot, and here I'll be writing the release. Like this. Okay, and I'll put out the bracket here. So these are the way, this is the use of the acquire one, and this is the use of the release one, right? I've just repeated both of them here. Fine. Now I'm just defining my function. So here I'll just write here def like this. Okay. Right, so def declare time, this is basically my function. Let me just remove this out. Okay, I have already written that def. I just repeated that once again. Let me remove it from here. Fine, okay. Now let's write something inside this function and let's execute that. Basically, what are we gonna write? Fine. So I'll be writing here. Okay, first of all, inside this, I'll be passing out my name. Okay, so which we had actually made here. So I'm just passing out here thread name. Okay, so that would be here thread and name. Okay, thread name. Okay, one parameter. Second parameter is my delay, and third parameter is my same, that is my counter. So these are the 3 parameters which I am having here. Okay, now I'll be applying a condition here that while counter. Okay, to apply a condition while counter. Okay, that till the time the counter will run. So here be applying time dot sleep, and into the bracket I'll be passing out the delay. Okay, it is not like this, it is del like this. Okay, this is delay. right? And now I'll be putting out my print statement to print, and I'll be putting here %s colon %s. Okay, and I would again put a percent sign here, and now inside the bracket it will basically I'll be passing out again the same things which I passed above. Thread name, comma, that is time dot c time. Okay, and into the bracket time dot time. So it will basically help me to give the correct time which I am having right now. Right, so for that I've just mentioned this particular thing, and simply I would just write my counter minus is equal to 1. So that means that counter is equal to counter minus 1. Right, that is completed. Now just go back here and define my thread lock which I have declared above. So thread and lock, this one. Okay. Now just put a equal to sign here. And now basically what I would just do is that I would just assign some things, some values to it. Okay. So that will basically here, that will be threading dot and lock like this, and here the brackets, right? So this is actually how we just define out the thread lock. Okay, right, fine. Okay, now just come on to the next line. Basically now what I would be just okay, time dot time. Okay, this time, fine. Now what I would be just doing here is that let me just first of all take it to the here, right? It's okay now. Now let me just come down, and here I'll be defining out the threads, and that will be here blank. Right, now I'll be creating out new thread. So let's say the new thread that I'll be creating is, let's say T1, one is my T1 and another will be my T2. Name for my class was 1, right, and inside that I'll be passing the values which I was having. So let's say marks are 21, and after that let's say name is let's say name is first thread. Okay, let's say this is the name, and after that what is the counter? Let's say counter is 1. Okay, after that I would just write T2, and the class name is again 1, and into the bracket let's say marks are 25. The name is the second, let's say name is the second thread, and basically let's say I have the counter that is 2, right? And now what I would be just doing is that I'd be starting out my threads here. Okay, so for starting out my threads, basically I'd be just using out that particular names which I have made here. Okay, so that would be for me T1 dot start. Okay, T1 dot start, and then the bracket. After that it would be T2 dot start, and again the bracket, right? And now basically I would be adding the threads to the list which I have made above, right? So in that case I'd be using threads dot append, and in the bracket T1. Okay, again I'd be doing the same thing, that is okay, threads, right? So threads dot append, and again in the bracket it would be T2. Okay, let me write out the correct spelling, THR, and here goes the E, right? That is also done. Now basically I'll be applying out my for loop for basically for all the threads to complete, right? So for that my for loop goes for, let's say for T in threads, I'll be putting out this, and it is T dot join and the bracket. And at last I just want to print out a statement that that thread is finished, right? So let's say this is the whole program which I have written here. I would just run it once first of all. Okay, let me quickly run that out here. Fine. Okay, so it is and it is required got built-in type or function or method. Okay, let's see that basically what it is actually saying to us. What's the line number? Let's see our line number also, line number 19. Okay, let me just close this out here, and the terminate one, and go above. Okay, now move on to the line number 19 which we have written, and where is that one? Fine. Okay, let me just see that what actually we have done. So %s colon %s is done, right? That is absolutely correct here. And after that basically right here. Okay, now basically I just need to give the space first of all, right? This, okay, this is done. Again the space for my % sign. Okay, now let me take the cursor to the other side. So thread name is okay, thread name comma c dot time. Okay, where are my brackets? I just missed out the bracket here. Fine. Now let me run it once again. Right here, so now it is basically giving me my answer, right? That the threading is first, then after some time it is giving me the answers, right? Because of the time which we have given above, right? Because we had set out the counter. So first thread Thursday, June 24, and this is the time. Then second thread this particular time, third thread this particular time, and fourth thread this particular time. Right? And the main thread after this is finished. So the first thread is starting, at the second time is the threading name, the starting name is second thread, and all of these things run. Right? Basically, I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea that how we now use out the lock function in the threading. Basically, when we just try to do a synchronization using the threads, so how we just use that with the help of the lock function. Right? We'll be stopping up here. We'll be coming up with more in the which basically used in the thread synchronization. Right now we had seen already that what is a lock function in the previous video, and we had even discussed about the thread synchronization as well. Right now today we'll be applying the rlock. This is one another function which we have, which we apply in the thread synchronization. So you'll be seeing that how we do, what are the things that we apply, how to use out these functions, right? So basically, for that, what I had just done is that I'll be writing out a program for finding out the factorial, and within that program only, I'll be telling you that how to use out this rlock function. Right? So without wasting time, let's get started here. So now here's a little bit of difference that comes, and from that I'm just writing, instead of writing that import threading, I'll be writing that from threading. I'll be just writing from threading import asterisk. I'll be writing this particular sentence instead of writing that import threading, right? I'll be writing that from threading import asterisk. So this actually means that from the threading module and the threading library which we have, the module which we have, from that basically I'm just trying to import everything. The asterisk means that each and every functions which I am having into this particular library, I am trying to import all of these here, right? So in that case, I can just use any of the functions whichever I just want, right? And the second thing that I'll be writing here is that I'll be writing import time. So this is one another module that I'm importing, as I'll be using this thing inside in my program. So in that case, I'm just importing out this time module as well, right? So these are the two things that I'll be importing here. And now basically after this, I'll be taking out a variable, let's say a. Okay, and a is equal to, here I'll be defining capital R, capital L, and OC. This is how we define the rlock. Okay, I've taken out a variable that is a, and into that I have used out my rlock function, which we are going to see today, right? So this is the thing that I have done till now. Now, as I mentioned, that will be writing out a program for finding out the factorial, right? So in that case, what I would be just doing is that I'll be making a function. So, def find underscore factorial. This is the name for my factorial. Sorry, this is the name for my function which I'm just making here. That is find underscore factorial. Right? So we all know that how to make out the functions in the Python programming, right? We just use the keyword that is def, and after that we just write out the name for the function which we have. Let's say here we have find underscore factorial, right? So I just wrote out the name for that function, which is find underscore factorial, right? And I just put out a bracket, and let's see here inside this I'll be passing out a parameter, let's say n. Okay, that I have done here, right? Now coming on to the next line, I'd be using here a dot and rlock. Okay, a dot rlock, right? Basically, sorry, not this rlock, I'm sorry, I'm just removing this rlock, and instead of this I'll be using acquire, acquire. So even in the previous video we have discussed in very detail where that what does this acquire function actually means, that what does it actually do, right? We had already discussed that. So here a is actually referring to my rlock function, right? I'm basically assuming that you're able to see that here in the variable that is a, I have stored my rlock function. So okay, it is referring to my rlock function. So here it is rlock dot acquire. It means to apply, right? Come on to next line. Now I'll be putting out my conditions here. The conditions which we have, let's say my first condition that if basically the value for n is 0, then the factorial for that is basically 1, right? So I'll be writing out the same thing here, that if n is equal to 0, where if this is my condition that n is equal to 0, then I would be taking a variable that is okay, let's say that is the answer. So let's say answer is my basically a variable which I have taken, right? And into this I'll be storing a number that is 1. So if my condition that is if n is equal to 0, it means that if the number which you have entered that is 0, then in that case basically my answer would be 1, right? So that means that the factorial for 0 is always 1, right? We all know this thing, that the factorial for n is 1. So sorry, for if factorial for 0 is 1. So in that case, I've just written out the same thing here, right? Now I'll just come on to the next line and apply my second condition, that is for my else. Okay, else. Now I'll be writing here, I'll be taking the same variable, that is answer, which I have taken previously, right? So into that I'll be storing here answer is equal to uh, n multiplication, and here goes the n multiplication factorial, and into the bracket, okay, this is find factorial, not factorial. Let me come down first of all, n multiplication like this, and here it would be find underscore factorial. Okay, so find underscore factorial, and into the bracket I'll be writing n minus 1. So right, this is the recursion approach which I have used here, right? This is how we just like use out the recursion in the factorial programs. Okay, this is how actually we just do this thing. Fine. So that I have just done here. Now after this, basically, so answer is equal to n multiplication find underscore factorial. This find underscore factorial is my function name, and this n is basically the variable, the argument which I have passed inside my function, and here I'm just putting out the condition that till n minus 1. So let's say 5, so I'll be writing 5 multiplication 4 multiplication 3 multiplication 2 multiplication 1. This is how it will go till n minus 1. Okay, right, and now just I'll be coming out here, and here I'll be using a dot another function, that is release. Okay, a dot release, this is my another function. And now instead of writing again and again return answer and return answer in the if and else condition, I would just come out of these conditions, and here I'd be writing return answer. Answer is a variable in which I had stored the final answer, that what will be the answer if you have just taken out the whatever, let's say whatever factorial of a number, right? Let's say if you have taken here as 0, so in that case answer is 1, right? And if you have taken any other number, so in that case basically whatever the number you have taken, that would be coming out here, right? So return here and then the answer. Fine, right? Now basically what I would just do is that I'll be coming on to the next line, and here basically I'll be defining out a function. Okay, def, and let's say my function name is final. Okay, and into the bracket I'll be again be passing that same parameter, that is n. Okay, I want a statement to come. So I just want a statement as an answer that the factorial of this number is this. Okay, so in that case simply I'm just using out this function here. This is the only reason that's why I am making, otherwise I would not have made out this one. Right. So in my print statement I'll be writing print, and inside this I'll be writing the factorial. I'll be writing the factorial of, I'll be putting out a comma here. I just want to write a number as well, okay, of n. The n is basically my number, is, right? And I'm just putting out this quotes like this, is, and again a comma, and here I'll be calling out my function. So that is find underscore factorial, and into the bracket it is basically n. Right, that I have done. So here inside this statement, basically I just use out a print statement. In that I have written the factorial of n is, and find factorial, and into the bracket I have written here as n. Right, come on to the next line here. Now I'll be making out the threads. Okay, I'll be making out the threads here. So okay, what I had taken here, a all set. I'll just take the, let's say, a1. Okay, so a1 is equal to, now here I'll be writing the thread. Okay, the thread function which we have into the threading module, that I'll be using here, right? A1 is equal to thread. Into the bracket I'll be writing here the target. Now target is basically what? Target is my final function, right? Final. Because in this only I am having my statement, and from this statement only it will directly take it to the find underscore factorial function. Right, so in that case, I'll be calling out my final function. I'll be putting a comma, and I'll be passing the arguments here. So let's say firstly I want the, let's say, the factorial of the number, that is 4. Okay, I'll put out a comma, and now come on to the next line. So now let's say a2 is equal to, I want to find the factorial of one more number, let's say. So I will just make one more thread here. So with the help of the threading module, I will just simply make out the thread. So this is one of the function which we have in the threading module. So thread, and into the bracket I'll be writing here target. Okay, so what is my target? My target is again same, that is my final function. I will put a comma here, and I'll be passing out the arguments. right? So basically, what are my arguments? My arguments, I just, let's say I will pass 5 comma, right? So just let me quickly give some space here so that it can be a little bit differentiate. Okay, not like this one. Fine. So I just even passed out my arguments as well, whatever I just wanted, the numbers for which I just wanted to the factorial to come, right? And after this, what I would just write, okay, come on to the next line. I would write a1 dot start. Okay, that will basically start printing me my it will basically start the execution of my threads, right? And here again goes the a2 dot start. So this a2 dot start will again start the execution of my threads. Let me just quickly give you an overview of the program, then I would run the final output, right? Okay, so here we do not need this time because I have just not used this time here. Okay, we can just like comment this thing as well here. Right, so let's say A is one of the variables that I have taken, and into that I had stored my rlock function. After that, I have defined a factorial as I want to write out a program for finding out the factorial. So I've defined a function that is find underscore factorial, and into the bracket I have passed an argument that is in. Right, then basically a is equal to rlock. Rlock was a function which I have stored in the variable that is a, right? So now I have used out my variable that is a with the function here that is acquire. So I just wrote a dot acquire. Now my next conditions come that I want to apply a condition that if n is equal to 0. If basically the number which we are going to input for finding out the factorial, if that is 0, so in that case what will be my answer? So in that case my answer would be 1, as the factorial for 0 is 1, right? And if the first condition is not satisfied, so we will go to the else, and here basically I have stored an answer that n multiplied factorial n multiplication find underscore factorial, and into the bracket it is n minus 1, right? So here it will be basically go and write out a dot release. Okay, a dot release, a is by basically rlock, right? And simply I just return the answer. I do not want to again and again write out return answer. So in that case I simply wrote this return answer outside my loop. So whatever the condition satisfies, after that it will come on to this particular part here, right? After this, basically, now I just wanted a output that would basically in the correct statement. So in that case I just wrote here def final, right? So in that case this final is one of the functions which I had made, and into the bracket I had passed on the same argument which I had done on the above one, right? And I simply used out my print statement that the factorial of n is, and here I just call out the my function that is find underscore factorial, and in the bracket pass out the parameter that is n. Okay, after that I just made out my threads. My threads were a1 and a2. Into that I just passed my target. So my target was my final function, because in that my final statement is written. And what are the arguments? Arguments means that what numbers factorial do I want to find. So that is 4 and 5, right? And at last I just started my threads. Now it's the time for running out this program once. Fine. Now just have a look that what output I am just getting here. So the output which I am just getting here is that the factorial of 4 is 24 and the factorial of 5 is 120, right? So these were the two numbers which I have entered previously, right? I wanted the factorial of 4 and 5. So for 4 it is giving me 24 and for 5 it is giving me 120, and that is absolutely right, right? So this is actually how we just use the rlock within the threads, and this is how we just write out the program using the rlock and the function, right? So I hope you just got a fair and a clear idea regarding the how to use out this rlock function. So that let me spell that. That is QUEUE, right? This is the name for the module that we are going to use, and with the help of that particular module we are going to make the threads, and then we are just going to proceed on while making the threads and applying the functions and all those things. So the main thing is that we are going to use the Q function with the help of the threading. And let us see that basically how it goes and how we'll be able to write out the program. What are the functions that we'll be using? We'll be making out the classes. We'll be importing the time. So these are all the ideas that we are going to cover today with this Q function. Okay, Q module, right? So I just not waste a lot of time here. I would just start writing, and within that only I would just let you know the necessary things, whatever I'm just doing there, right? So let me start here. So for the very first, I'm just importing out the Q modules. Okay, so just make sure that Q is a small here. Okay, it's not capital one, it's the small one. So for that, you need not to install or something like that. It's not necessary, because actually you are using out this Q module here. Okay, this is an inbuilt which comes, right? So you need not to install that. Simply you need to import it here, right? After importing of the Q module, I'll be importing out the threading here. Okay, because we are going to make the thread. So for that I just need to install the threading module as well, right? And simply I'm just going to import here time. Okay, so import time will basically help me. I just want to give some timing here, so because of that only I'm just importing out the timer mod. Okay, right here, these all three things are done. After that, I would just make out a variable, let's say a, and that I would just set it as here as 0. Okay, now basically why I'm just making that thing and all those things, that will be letting know. I'll just let you know that things in a little while. Okay, but for now understand that I'm making this variable and putting it as 0. Fine. Okay, I'll be defining out my class here. So okay, let me just come on to the next line, and here. So my class is basically, let's say the name for my class is 1. Okay, that would be small here. Okay, we all know that how we define a class with the help of threads, right? We just give it the class name, and after that we simply write out here, so threading, and with the help of the threading module we just import out the thread here, right? So thread, okay, thread like this. So class 1 threading dot thread. Okay, this is the thing that we actually do always, right? Okay, let me calm down first of all. I'll put out a colon and come on to the next line. So here I'll be defining out my init function, def underscore underscore. Here goes the init, again underscore, and in the bracket we have self. And okay, now basically what I'll be just doing is that I want to pass here some arguments into my function, right? That I just want to pass here. Okay, so for that I'll be just putting here, let's say first is my id. Okay, let's say first is my id and second is my name. Let's say these are the two arguments which I passed, and other than that, let's say I would just take here, let's say b. Okay, these are the three things which I have actually passed on inside this init function, right? And after that I'll just again be using my threading module for initializing that, right? So with the help of this threading module I'd be using out my thread here. Okay, threading dot, and here goes a, okay, here would be capital and here goes a thread, right? And I'll just put a dot and initialize it. So for initializing we just use underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and in the bracket I need to write out the self, because self is the constructor that we use throughout the program whenever we are just using out the classes, right? Okay, that thing is absolutely done here. Now, what next I'll be just doing here is that I would be starting here. I would define the self and the arguments which I have passed. So self dot id is equal to id. Okay, that is id. And after that, I have self dot name is equal to name. And then I have self dot b is equal to b. Right, these are the three ones which we have defined. I've just written all of those. Fine. Now, basically, I just want all of these things to be printing as an output for me. So we always know that whenever we just define out the function, whenever we just define out a class with the help of the threading module, so we always use the function name as a run. Okay, run. Whenever we just want to print out what are the details we'll be giving as an object here, whenever we just want to print that out. So we always use out this run as the function name. You cannot change this name. If it's gonna change this name, it will result to the error, right? So in that case only you can just use this run. Okay, right here I'll be writing out the print statement, and here I'll be starting out my, okay, so starting, I'll just write here starting from here, right? And I would just come on to the next line. Okay, and after this basically what value I just need to give here, I would just write self dot id. Okay, now basically, okay, instead of id I would just give the name, starting name, right here. Okay, see now basically what happens here is that you can basically you have two options. Either you can use the print statements or you can use the if strings. Whatever basically suits you, you can just use any of these things. In some examples, I have shown you how to use out the if strings, and in some I'm showing you how to use out the print statements, so that you are just getting the hands-on for both of these things, right? Okay, in the if strings we use the return statement, and for this print we do not do something like that. We just simply write this thing, right? Okay. I would come on to the next line. Okay, now here I would be defining one function downside. So for that, I would be just using out one of that function name. So just let me do one thing. Let me just come here for a while and let me define that function name as well. Okay. Okay. So let's say def, and let's say that function name is details for me, like this. Okay. And basically in the bracket, I would be writing out the thread name and basically my parameter, that is b, which I have passed above, and simply I would just write here pass, right? So this is the function which I have defined. Now why I have defined? Because I want to use out this function here in this program, and in the run function I want to use this here, right? So my function name is details, right? Details, and in the bracket I'll be writing self dot name, comma, and I'll be just writing self dot b. The two parameters which we have defined above as well, same I'm just writing here. Okay, coming on to the next line, here I'll be writing print, starting, and then here I'll be writing exit. Okay, exit, I'll put out a plus sign, and here I'll be writing self dot name. Okay, that is completed here. So my run function is actually completed. Okay, right here. Fine. Now let's move on to the other thing. So I'll be just defining out my details function now here. Okay, I'm just putting out some conditions here that will basically help us. Okay, so my condition goes here that while not a. Now you remember that what is a which we have declared above? You remember? Let me show you that thing that I have declared a variable and put it as a value as 0. Right? So my condition says that while not 0. Okay, instead of this a is having a value as 0. So this actually says that while not 0. Right? Now here I'll be using that my qlock function. Okay, so I just write here q, and that is lock, queue lock. Okay, I will just put out a dot here, and after this I'll be using the acquire, quire like this, and the bracket. Okay, so queue, this is done, and here we have the log dot acquire. Right, this is qlock is one thing that we actually have here under this q function. I'm sorry, under this q module which we are actually having here. Right, that I have just written. I would just come on to the next line, and basically here what I would just do, okay, this qlock is the variable which I'll be defining downside. So just wait for that. Okay, I'll be defining out this variable downside. So q acquire I have just written. Now I have to apply my condition that if not, okay, let me define out these variables downside only, then only it will be like better. Okay, let me just come down here. Fine. Okay, so I'm just defining a thread list here. So I would just write here thread, let me write that thread underscore list like this. Okay, thread underscore list. And let's say into that I would just store, let's say A, I have A, I have, let's say B, and let's say I have C. Okay, these are the three ones which I have stored into this list. Coming down, basically I'll be giving out some names. Okay, so names is equal to, and let's say names are 1. Other than that, let's say names are 1, 2. Then I have 3. I have, let's say 4. Okay, let me come down first of all. And let's say I have 5. Okay, let's say these are the 5 names which I actually have. Now basically I want to use out my threading.log function. Okay, so for that basically I'll be defining out a function that is define a variable that is qlock. Okay, and into this basically I'll be storing that threading.lock like this. Okay, and it would be capital, not small. Right, now basically I hope that you have got an idea that what I had written above, what that actually qlock actually meant, right? After that I would even, okay, that would be, let me just define as q underscore lock, and here also let me just take it like that only. Fine. After that I have even one more function, that is, let me just write that here. So that is q underscore, and I would just write here work. Okay, this is the another one which I have defined, one variable under. Okay, so into that as well I will just pass here q, my module which I have imported above, that only I'm just using. Okay, q, and let's see here I'm just giving some time. Let's see that is okay, and after that thread list is done, and now I'm defining that define the threads here and keep it as empty. And what about my id? Okay, not that id, right? Let it be like this only for now, right? So here let me just complete out this thing which you're writing. So q underscore log dot acquire, and here the brackets are written. Now if I just apply the condition that if not work, q underscore work. Okay, if not q underscore work dot empty. So my condition is that if this q underscore work is not empty, okay, if this is not empty, then at that case I need to take out a variable that is data. So data is equal to b dot get. Get is a function which we have already discussed, right? So after that I would just use that lock use, that was q underscore lock, right? So q underscore lock dot, and first of all I just acquire that thing, right? First of all I just acquired that. Now I would just release that from here. Okay, and I will just write out a print statement, print. Okay, let me just come down this side, print. Okay, so here it goes, the percent is that is processing, and again it goes like where's the percent? Yeah, like here. Okay, percent s, right? These these percent s are actually the thread name and the data which I have actually taken. Okay, so I would just write here this thread name. I would put out a comma here, and after that I would just write here the data. Right, this is completed. So my if condition is actually completed here. Right, now the time for my else condition. So I will just write out my else condition as well. If this is not the condition, then go to the else part and simply here q underscore log dot release. Do not use that require function, all those things. Simply use the release, and after that time dot sleep. So time dot sleep is, let's say, 1 second. Okay, this is completed. So list we have already defined here, and the lock is defined, the threads is defined. Okay, and basically here what I would just do is that I would be taking out okay, so above we have already defined the thread id, right? So for that the id we had defined, that was, let me take it here as well. Fine, so now I would just define that thing here. So I would write here id, yeah, id, right? This one we had defined. Let me just check that above once. Okay, I and d was the capital. Fine, so I and then capital D is equal to, right? So ID is equal to, and now let me just give out the value, let's say 1 here, right? Now basically I'm just going to create a new thread. So for my condition goes for t name, let's say t name is a variable, okay? So for t name in basically the thread list which we have defined above, okay? So for the t name in thread list, come on to the next line, and basically what we do here is that I need to make out a variable that is thread. So thread is equal to, I'll be just using the name for my class, that is 1, right? And into that I'll be passing out the parameters that we have passed above. So that was ID, that was ID. Other than that, what was that? Okay, just let me see that what we had defined above. So we had taken the name right here. Fine. So ID comma, and here I'll be giving out that the name that I have written above for the for loop. Okay, comma. And after that we had even taken the q underscore work right here. I just wrote that thing as well. Right? Okay, this is done. Now come on to the next line, and I would just start my thread here. So thread dot start and then the brackets, right? After that it is basically we had even taken the threads one, right? Threads is the variable which we have taken. So threads threads dot, and here I'll be using out my append function, and in that I would be appending my thread which I have made right now, right? And after that I'll be writing id is the id, okay, that is the id plus is equal to 1, right? That is completed. Now basically what I would just do here is that I would be filling the queue. Okay, that this thing is absolutely completed here. I just have defined out my for loop. Now I'll be completing out my queue. So for that I'll be filling out my queue. So that would be q underscore lock dot acquire, my function that I would be using here, acquire okay, quire, like this. Okay, q underscore, okay, let me just give out some space as well here so that it does not mix up with each other. So q underscore log dot acquire, here I have my function, and after that I will be using that for. Okay, for word, let's say word is one another variable which I have taken. So for word in okay, let's say I am taking a list here. Okay, so for that basically the list which we have taken above was, what was that? We had taken names, right? So for word in names, right here. So for word in names, I'll be writing here colon and come on to next line, and we're just using that q underscore work dot put function, and we inside the so I'm just using the word which I have defined above, right? And I will just come on to next line, and here I'll be using my q lock. Okay, q lock dot release and the brackets like this, right? This is absolutely done. Now what I would just do is that I'll be waiting for my queue to empty. I would just apply the condition so that it should wait for the queue to get empty. So for that my condition is that while not q underscore work dot empty. Okay, while not q underscore work dot empty, put out the colon here, and I will simply write out the pass here. Fine, and after that basically I'll be put that value as 1, that was a which we have taken, right? My last condition goes here that for let's say t is a variable which I have taken. Okay, so for t in, let's say, threads which we have already defined, right? T dot Define the bracket like this, and at the last I'll be exiting the thread. So print exit the thread. Right, I just completed out my whole program. Now basically it's the time to run that here. So let's quickly run here. Okay. So now basically you are able to see, okay, now have a look at what it is actually doing. It is starting the A, starting B and starting C, the three which we have taken. C processing 1, A processing 2, B processing 3, again C processing 4, A processing 5, and the B is being exited. Okay, I've just not used a backslash n, so in that case it is coming onto the same line, but leave it that. Okay, exit B, exit C and exit A, and my final thread is being exited here. Exit the thread, right? This is the whole program that we had actually written. I hope that you got the idea that how you can use the queue module and the queue functions with the help of the threads, and how you can just write out the program for that, right? I hope I just made this thing very clear to you. The semaphores, we are going to see that what are semaphores in the Python programming language, why we just use this, and basically how to use this thing with the help of the threads in the Python programming, right? So basically, first of all, let's see that what is a semaphore actually. So semaphore can be used to limit the excess of the shared resources with limited capacity, right? Now let's say you want to share some resource, okay? In that basically it can be used to limit the excess of that shared resources with the limited capacity, right? Let's say you want to just share some resource to some persons, some, let's say 10 persons. Okay, so this with the help of the semaphore technique you can just share that particular resource to the limited capacity whatever you just want, right? Okay, after that, this is an advanced part of the synchronization, right? We just used to do the synchronization using the R and the sorry, using the lock and the R lock. Right? These were the two techniques that we had already seen. So this is an advanced part of the synchronization. Now, what was happening in that particular case, that we were taking the lock and R lock. So in lock and R lock, you can just share 4 to 5, like you can just share the resources with 4 to 5 persons at a time, right? You can just you cannot make threads inside a thread, and you can just not share it with many people. But this was the use that why we just introduced the semaphore here. So it can be used to limit the excess of the shared resources with limited capacity. So it is basically an advanced part of the synchronization, right? So first of all, I hope that I had made this thing very clear to you that what are semaphores actually used for, right? Now we'll be moving towards the programming, that we'll be seeing that how to write out the code using the semaphores, right? So here I am, and let me just come down and get out some space here after the definition, right? So I would just start defining my library here, right? So we all know that whenever we just want to make the thread, so we just used to do all these things like this. What we actually do, we actually import the threading module, right? So here I'm just using a different technique for that. So I'm just writing from threading import asterisk. So this means that from the threading module, I am trying to import the asterisk. This actually means that from the threading module, I am trying to import all of the functions, basically all the functions which I have in the threading module. Right, now why I am just using this, because from this I just need to use the semaphore function, right? So in that case, instead of writing import this particular function or that particular function, I am simply writing that from threading import me this asterisk, that is basically my all the functions from this threading module, right? And even after that I'd be using the time module as well. So I would be importing the time module as well here. So import, and here comes the time. Okay, now basically you'll be creating an instance here. Okay, creating a thread instance here, and I'll be giving it a particular count, let's say, right? So I would just, let's say my instance is A. Okay, let's say A is my instance which I have created, and that I'll be creating with the semaphore, right? So here goes the semaphore. Okay, and now inside the bracket I'll be putting the count. Okay, that what count actually I just want here. So let's say my count is 3 which I want. Okay, that thing I have done. Now what I would be just doing is that now I'd be creating out my instance here. Okay, I'd be creating out my instance. So for that I'd be using out a function here. Okay, def. Okay, def, I'm just making a function here. So it is my keyword which I use to make out the function, right? And inside this function, I'll just name this function as, let's say, details. Okay, right? Let's say details is the name for this function, and inside this bracket I'll be passing a parameter, and let's say that parameter is here. Okay, that is, let's say, a underscore name. Okay, let's say this is the parameter which I had actually passed here. Now you can just pass any parameter according to your choice, whatever you just want. I just want to pass out a underscore name, so I've just done that thing. Right, now what I would just do is that we do actually do here, we call the acquire method, right? We just use this acquire method inside the function. This is the same thing, right, which we are doing from the previous programs as well. So here I would be just taking, okay, let me just check out the variable that is a. Okay, we had made the we had made a thread instance as the name of a, right? So I would just take that a here, I'll put out a dot, and I would just use out my acquire method here. So a dot acquire. Okay, this is the full zoom, right? So I just use out this acquire method. That is absolutely okay. Right, now what I would be just doing is that I'll be applying out a for loop. Okay, so let's say for I in range. Okay, for I in range, and let's say I'll be writing here 4. Let's say 4 is my number which I have actually given inside this. Okay, so for I in range, and in the bracket it is 4. Right, now what I would just do here is that I'd be printing out the statement. So print, and let's say I want to print out my name. Okay, okay, instead of my name, let's print out here as Python. Okay, Python. Okay, and I would just do here comma and just put out an end here so that it actually differentiates, give some spaces between the things, right? So here I have taken out the for loop. Inside for loop, I just put out a number that till this particular range, just print me this statement that is Python. Okay, and then after that, give me some space as well. Right, this is the thing that I have written. After that, I would be even using my time model which I have imported above. Right, so I would be just using that time dot sleep, and now into the bracket I would be giving that in what time interval I just want it to be appearing. Right, so let's say here I just give as 1.5 seconds. Okay, so this will all the value which you are going to give here, that will always be in the seconds only. Right, if you just want to convert it into minutes or hours, so you need to multiply accordingly with the 60, right? But here the default value which are actually taken, these are in the seconds, right? I have done, and I would just come on to the next line and just use out print, and inside this print statement I would be using my parameter which I have written inside my function, and that is a underscore name. Okay, so this a underscore name is actually having this particular name which is Python, right? Okay, now basically this till this point it is absolutely right, and now what I would be just doing is that I would be calling out my calling out my release function. So a dot release, right? I would just come here and I would just go back. Okay, give me a tab space here, and here only I'll be coming down and using a dot release. Okay, so this is basically I'm just calling out my release function here. Fine. Now what I would just do is that I would be creating the multiple threads. Okay, at the threads which I just want, I'll be creating that here. So come on to the next line, and let's say the name for my threads are A1. First one is the A1. Okay. So for that, I'll be using out my thread function here. Into the bracket, I'll be writing out that what is my target. So in the target, what we do actually, we write out the function name, right? We call out the function here. So my target is details, right? So I would just write here details. Right, I would put out a comma, and what are the arguments which I want to pass here? Okay, so my argument was which I just want to pass here, that is a underscore name. So let's say I would be passing here a thread. Okay, let's say this is the argument which I want to pass here, and I'll just put out a comma here. Right, let's say I would come on to the next line. I would write a2 here. Okay, a2 is equal to, I would be again using that particular same thing, which is thread, and into the bracket I'll be writing target is equal to details, comma, what are my arguments? So my arguments now will be, I'll be putting out the same as well, only name differentiates, that is b thread. Okay, let me just write this h as a small b thread. Okay, and I would put I would put a comma here after the thread like this, right? So now basically till what particular point I would be just doing the same thing. So I'll be doing the same thing till 4. Okay, I'm just making 4 threads here because in my range what I had put in here, I just put here 4, right? So because of that I'll be making my 4 threads here. So A1, A2 is completed. Now comes the turn for my A3. So A3 is equal to, I'll be again making a thread here. Into the bracket, I'll be writing about the target. So my target is my function name, that is details, right? I put out a comma here. And what about my arguments? So my arguments are now C thread, right? The name for my now next thread is C. And I'll put out a comma here. Again, come on to the next line. I'll be using A4. A4 is equal to, and that is the thread again, right? And now inside this, I'd be using target is equal to, and again, I'd be calling out my function, that is details, right? Okay. I will put out a comma here, and after that, I'd be passing the argument. So args arguments, that is equal to, and my fourth argument is d thread, and I will put out a comma, right? So my all the four threads are made, which I just wanted to make. I had made 4 because in my for loop I had passed the number as 4. Now whatever the number you pass, that number of threads will be making here, right? That is completely done. Now basically what's my last and the next task for this program? That is basically I need to call out the threads, right? So for threads calling, what we do, we write the name for the thread, that is A1, and simply I would just call out my function, that is the start. This is how we call the threads. I would just write A2 dot start. Next comes my A3 dot start. Okay, and at last comes my A4 dot start, right? This is how actually we call out the threads, right? So here I just completed my program using the semaphore. So here comes my semaphore, right? Now what I would just do is that I would run out my program here once, and let's see that basically what output we are getting. See, it is basically printing me Python, Python, Python 3 times first of all. Okay, then it is printing me the C and my thread. Then Python B, Python A, and then my thread, right? Now, it is basically again and again printing me Python till the number of times my loop is actually running. Till this particular point, my loop is running this one. This for loop, till the point it is running, it is printing me again and again the Python. Right, so basically if you are able to see, actually it is very small, so that is in the case I need to zoom in. So because of zooming, it comes on to the next lines as well. But 3 will be printed in one line, then another will be printed in another line, and another will be printed in another line. It goes like this only, right? But because of here I'm just zooming in to show you the output, it is printing in some different lines. But if I just zoom it out again, now it will be in the correct order, right? So basically, I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea that how we actually use the semaphores in the threads, and basically what's the use of this, what alternative we are using it for, and basically this part, this is advanced part which comes in the synchronization, right? So I hope I just made. We are going to discuss about that what is a bounded semaphore, right? In the previous video we had discussed about the semaphores, right? We had seen that what are semaphores and what are they actually used for. Now today we have another thing, and that is a bounded semaphore. We are going to discuss that what do we actually mean from bounded semaphore and what it is used for, and after that we are going to see a program in which we will be using out the bounded semaphore, right? So I'll be starting here for the bounded semaphore, but before that once I just want to discuss about the definition for the semaphore. Once I just want to discuss that thing which we have seen in the previous video, right? We had seen about the semaphores, that semaphores can be used to limit the access to the shared resources with limited capacity. So this is a basically advanced part of the synchronization. Right, this is about the semaphores. That semaphores can be used to limit the access to the shared resources with limited capacity. It is an advanced part of the synchronization. This was about the semaphores, right? Now let's move toward the bounded semaphore. And a bounded semaphore checks to make sure its current value does not exceed its initial value. So basically in bounded semaphore, what happens that it basically checks to make sure that the current value which it is having actually that does not actually exceed the initial value. Okay, this is what the bounded semaphore actually does. Okay, and basically if that value is raised, if the value exceeds the initial value, then basically we get a value error as an output, right? This is what actually the bounded semaphore actually does, right? That boundary semaphore checks to make sure its current value does not exceed its initial value. If it does, value error is raised. Now I would be writing out a program for the bounded semaphore, and let's see basically that how I can write out the use and basically use out the bounded semaphore. Okay, so The very first thing, as we know that this comes under the topic that is actually threads, right? Here we'll be making a thread, and from that only we'll be using out the bounded semaphore. So for the very first thing that I'll be doing is that I'll be importing out the threading module here, right? So basically, in the previous Python, basically not in the Python 3, but in the previous Python, we simply used to import threads. But even as we are using Python 3 now, so in that basically we need to import the threading module only. If we're just gonna import the threads, so that will be resulting you the error, right? So in that case, we simply import the threading module only. Other than that, I'll be importing here the time module. So I have to writing import and then the time. Okay, I'll be importing out the time module as well here. Fine. So I'll be using these two modules throughout my program. What I would just do is that I'll be take a variable. Let's say to that variable, I have given out a value. Let's say that is 2. Let's say. Okay, let's say 2 is a value which I have given out to this variable that I have made, and that is var is equal to 2. Right, I would come on to the new line. Now, basically in this particular new line, I'll be taking out a variable, let's say that is A. And I'll be using out my bounded semaphore. Okay, I'll be writing here threading dot, and I'll be writing here bounded, and here I'll be using semaphore like this. Okay, instead of this 2, let me take here as 3. Okay, so A is equal to, with the help of my threading module, I have used here my bounded semaphore, which basically allows us, what it does actually, it checks to make sure that the current value does not exceed its initial value. This is the work what bounded semaphore actually does, right? So for that as well, I've just used here my bounded semaphore. I'll put out a bracket, and we have a parameter here that is value. Okay, so into that parameter basically I'll be passing here as var. So var is my variable in which I have stored a value that is 3. So now basically this bounded semaphore actually check that the current value which we are having, that is 3, that does not exceeds the initial value, and if it actually does, then a type of value error is actually raised, right? This is what it will actually do. Come on to the new line. Here this is done, right? I'll be defining a function. Let's say that function is 1. Put out the brackets. Now I would be using out my acquire method here, right? So that I'll be using with the help of the variable which I have made, and that is A. Okay, so A dot acquire, like this I'll be writing out here. Fine. Okay, so I just use out my acquire method here. After this, I'll be using out one of the print statements, right? I'll be using out one of the print statements actually here. And into that print statement, I'll be first of all using out my threading module. So here goes my threading module, threading dot. Now, we have a function that is current underscore thread. Okay, we have this function already, current underscore thread, right? I'll be putting out a name here, like bracket here, and after that I'll be putting out the name. Okay, now let me just first come down. Fine, threading is my module. Okay, this current underscore thread is my function, and from that I'm just trying to find out the name from here. Okay, I'll be putting out a plus sign, and into that basically what I'll be just putting is that okay, I'll be writing acquire the resource. Okay, okay, let's say acquire the value. Let's say this is a sentence that I would be writing here after this. So as well, I'm just using this acquire so that I just can understand that which is the value, which is which is the print statement that is run after the acquire, and which is the print value that is actually run after the remove function. Right? This is the like way. That's why I am just writing this out here. Fine, so in the bracket, here it is threading module, my current underscore thread function dot name, and with the help of the concatenate function, concatenate, that's plus, I use the acquire the value. Right, now my acquire function actually has been used here. Now next thing comes that I'll be using some time dot sleep. Okay, and let's see my time dot sleep is 0.5. So after every 0.5 seconds I'll be getting out my output here, whatever is required for this, basically for this thing. Okay, that I'll be getting out here. So time dot sleep, and it is 0.5. Right, now what next I'll be doing here is that I'll be using a dot release. Okay, first of all I used out my acquire function. Now I'll be using out my release function. Right, a dot release. And in the next line, I'd be using out my print statement, and inside that, I'd be writing again the threading module, put a dot. After that, I'd be using the current thread function, and then I would be putting out a dot here, then using the name, right? After that, I'd be putting out a plus sign, and here I'd be writing release the, let's release the value. This is the statement which actually I wanted to be printed, so I have just written that thing here, right? The release the value. So inside my print statement, I have just let me show you that what I have done. Inside my print statement, I have taken out my threading module, and there after that, I've just used out a function that is current underscore thread and then name, right? And after that, I put out a plus sign and used release the value function, right? This is what I have done till now. Fine. Come outside the function. Now here I'll be defining a variable that is names, and that will actually store a empty list, right? Now I'll be applying a for loop, that for I. Okay, I'll be applying a for loop here for I in range. Okay, for I in range, and let's say my range is 1, 4. Okay, let's say this is my range. Let it be 1, 5. Right, so for I in range, I is basically one of the variable which I have taken, and I put out a range that is 1, 5. Okay, so for I in range 1, 5, I'll be making one another variable that is a underscore name. Okay, I'll be making another variable a underscore name, and into that, with the help of the threading module, I would be now making out some several threads, right? Threading dot T would be capital for my thread. Okay, into the bracket, I'll be writing what should be the name. So my name would be, let me give some space here, name would be thread. Okay, okay, just let me calm down. Fine, name would be thread here. Okay, what would be the addition? So plus I just want the string of I, str of I. So basically what I just want that whatever my index is actually going on, that particular name should come. It should come like thread 1, thread 2, thread 3, something like that it should come. Right? In that case, I'm just writing plus stri. And what is my target actually? So my target is my function. Okay, let me write correct target. And my target is my function that is actually 1. Name for my function is actually 1. Right? That I have written out here. And at last, I'll be writing here a underscore name dot start. So here this start will basically help to start out my threads actually. Okay, let me quickly give you a revision what I have done, then we'll be seeing the output. So we have imported out the threading module and the time module here. After that, I have taken a variable that is var, and into that I had stored a value that is 3, let's say. Okay, then I had taken another variable that is a, and into that, with the help of my threading module, I have used the bounded semaphore function, and into the bracket I have given out a value that is var. So basically my current value is actually 3, and this should not exceed my initial value. If it exceeds basically, so then then the value error is actually raised. This was what the bounded semaphore does, right? It checks to make sure its current value doesn't exceed its initial value, right? After that, I have defined out a function that is 1, and then I use the acquire function, and into the print statement I used out my threading module and use that with the help of the current underscore thread function dot name, right? And I just use a statement that is acquire the method. Same thing I did here for the sleep. I just wrote out a sleep time that I want my output to come in this much interval of time. See, 0.5 inside the sleep function, we always give the value in the seconds only. Okay. After the use of acquire method, I used out my release function here, right? That is print threading dot current thread name plus release, right? And inside a print statement, I just use that thing. After that, I have defined a list, okay? Blank list, that is the name is names. After that, I applied a for loop that for I in range 1, 5, okay? A underscore name is a variable which I defined, and here I defined my threads with the help of the threading module. Here is my thread. What should be the name into that? Name should be thread plus I have written str of I. Str of I, what it will do actually? It will take one element from this I. Okay, it will take one element from here, and it will write here str of I. And simply I wrote target is equal to 1. That is, I just called out my function here, and at last I simply started my thread. Right, I would just run out this thing here. So here we go with the output that is coming, that thread 1 acquire the value, thread 2 acquire the value, thread 3 acquire the value. After that, thread 3 is actually released. Thread 4 has acquired the value. Thread 2 released. Thread 1 released the value, and then at last thread 4 released the value. First of all, my all the 4 threads, because I have taken out the range, that is 1, 5. So it will go 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So it basically all my 4 threads have first of all acquired the value, and after that all of the 4 threads have actually released out the value, right? And this is how we use out this bounded semaphore, right? So I hope that basically you have got a fair and a clear idea regarding that what is actually bounded semaphore and how we just use that thing into the programming, right? So this is, now first of all listen to me, that interthread communication is one different thing and event is one method that actually comes under this interthread communication, right? So first of all we'll be seeing that what are both these terms, that what they actually mean, what is the use of them in Python programming, and after that we'll be seeing one program regarding the same. Right. So let's begin now with the first of all with the inter-thread communication. I'll be telling you first that what does this actually means, right? So sometimes one thread may be required to communicate to another thread depending on the requirements. Okay, let's say we are having a thread, one thread, okay, and we are having one another thread as well. So sometimes it may happen basically, let's say we are having some requirements, so depending on that requirements, one thread, let's say, may be required to communicate to the other thread, right? When one thread may be required to communicate to the other thread depending on some requirements that we have, this procedure is actually called as inter-thread communication. So communication between two threads is actually called as inter-thread communication. Right, I hope first of all I just made this thing very clear that what do you mean by inter-thread communication. Okay, this is the sentence, fine. Now comes regarding the event method that we have here. Now I'll be discussing that what is this event method actually and why is it actually useful. Fine, so event method. The event object is considered or recommended as the simplest communication process or system between any threads. Okay, so this event method which we are going to deal with today, writing out a program as well. So this is actually considered as a very simplest communication process between any two threads. I'm just not saying two, between any threads actually, okay? Whenever you just want to communicate between any threads, this event is a method which is the very simplest and the easiest to deal with. Okay, so this system works on two conditions where the event object is enabled means set or disabled means clear. So basically we have two conditions when you just want to work with the event method. So in that particular we have two conditions here. The first condition goes that event object is enabled, that means it is set. So set is a function which means that event object is enabled, and where you just use out the clear function, so this means that object is actually disabled, right? So whenever an object is enabled it will be disabled as well, right? So set is for the enabled one and clear is for the disabled one, right? So I hope I just made these two things very clear to you, that first of all what do you mean by inter-thread communication, and at the second place that what is this event method actually, why just actually we just use out this event method and what is it actually used for, right? These two things are I hope very much clear to you. Now let's move on writing out the program for this event method. Okay, so first of all what I'll be just doing is that I'll be importing out the time module and my threading module. Fine, so for that I'll be just writing here import time, because time is the module which actually I'll be using throughout the program to use, right? So from this time I actually you want to use out the sleep function. So in that case I have simply imported this time module, right? And second I'll be importing out the threading. So import threading, right? So this threading is basically the threading module which we actually have. Just like in Python 3 we use the threading module. Previously in the Python we used only threads, we used to import the threads, but in the Python 3 that threads actually do not work. So in that case we just need to import out this threading module. Okay, this is the idea. Now let me just make out a class here. Okay, now let me make out a class, and let's say my class name is, let's say, flower. Okay, my class name is, let's say, flower. Okay, now in this flower class basically what I would just do, I want to make out a function here, the method. Like whenever we just make out a function inside the class we just call that as method, right? So I am making out a method inside this class, right? So def, I would just write def, and let's say I just want to write out the color. I just want to make out a function that is color, right? So cell will automatically be passed inside this function because I am making this function inside my class. So whenever we just make out any of the functions inside the class, So self, the constructor which we are having at the self, it is automatically passed. Right, this is the idea. Now let's say I just want to print out some statement here. So I would just write print and I would just write, let's say the color for the flower is and let's say I would just write the color for the flower is white. Okay, so let's say this is the print statement which I actually want to write out here, that the color for the flower is white. Okay, okay, let me just make that as a small here. Fine. Now this is done. What I would just do is that I would actually take make out the object for my class which I have actually taken here. Fine. So okay. Okay. Before making out that object, what I would just do here is that I would be writing event underscore object. Okay, event underscore object dot weight, and weight is actually one of my functions which I have actually made out here. Okay, event underscore object dot weight. Fine, event underscore object will be declaring this thing afterwards in our program. Okay, but right now I just understand that this is actually a type of a variable which I have taken. Okay, so this will be the object which I will be defining inside the main function. Okay, let me do that as well here. So I would just write here main, and inside this I'll be writing here event underscore object. Okay, event underscore object, and that will be equal to my threading. So here I'll be using out my threading module dot, and I'll put out a dot here, and then I'll be using here as event. Okay, event is my function which I am actually using out here. Fine, now I'll be proceeding on with my program only, which actually I have here. Fine, so this is done actually. Now I will just come on to, okay, just one second, right here. So I just used out this wait one, and now I would just write print, and let's say I would just write got the flower. Okay, got the flower. Okay, this is the statement where actually I just wanted to print out, so I've just written out those things. Fine. Now I would make another function into my class as well. So let's say I just made out the color. Now I would just make out the kind. Okay, that what kind of flower that is actually. Okay. Inside the bracket self will again automatically be passed, because this is a method, this is a function which I am actually making inside my class. So there is no issues in saying this thing, that self, the constructor which we have here, that will automatically be passed inside this. Fine. I would be using here the sleep function, time dot sleep, and let's say I just want to give the time for the sleep as 4. First of all, my first function will run according to the calling which I would be doing out like downside into my main function. So as soon as I call out the function, that function will be called, and whatever the sleep time is given in that particular function, it will stay for that sleep time. It will stop for that particular time, and then result me the output downside, right? So I'll be adding out my print statement here, that okay, so the kind of flower, and let's say the kind of flower is, and I'll just give it out as, let's say, lily. Okay, the kind of flower is lily. Fine. Now I would just again come down and print out that here I'll be writing out okay, I'll be writing that I want to buy this. I want to buy this, right? Let's say these are the two statements which I written inside this kind function. Okay, so print the kind of flower is lily, and second I want to buy this. Okay, and simply I'll be using here event underscore object dot weight. Okay, that is WAIT, and put out the brackets like this, because weight is one of the functions, right? Now I would just come on to a new line, and my next function name would be def by. Okay, my next function name would be by. Again the self is passed. Now I would just not repeat out the reason that why it is again passed, because you know this thing, right? Fine. Now inside this I'll be again adding some time dot sleep, and let's say now I just want to give out the time dot sleep as okay, let me give it as 7 seconds. Just one more thing to make sure here, that whatever the time, whatever the number you are actually giving inside the sleep function, that is being taken in the seconds. Right, so here above 4 seconds has been taken, now here downside 7 seconds have been taken. I would use out my printf statement, and inside that I'll be writing that I want Lily from the buyer. Okay, I want Lily from the buyer. Let's say this is a sentence which I actually wrote out. Let me come down. Fine here, okay? I just wrote out the sentence, and now what I would just do is that I would use out my set function. Let me just go above first of all and see that what is it used for. So event object is enabled means set. Okay, so whenever we just use out the set function, so that means that my event object is actually enabled, and this is actually my event object. Right? I would just come onto a new line, and here I'll be using event underscore object dot set, and I'll put out the bracket like this. That means I have enabled out this particular thing. Okay, now it's the time for making out the object for my class. I will just come out here, and okay, my class name was 1, so let's say A is the object which I have made here, and class name was actually, okay, I need to check that it was 1, right? So that was okay, sorry, that was flower actually. Oh, I'm sorry. So I would just write here, let's say a capital F, okay, and the object and the class name is flower. So I just made out the object for my class, that is flower, okay, that I have done out here. Now I would just come inside my main function. Here I have already defined out this event underscore object. Now what I would just do is that I had made 3 functions. So for all of these 3 functions, I'll be creating out the threads. Okay, so this is my first thing that I will be doing out here. Okay, so let's say my first thread is T1. Okay, T1 is equal to, with the help of my threading module, I would be using here the thread, and into the bracket I'll be passing out the target. So my target would be, first of all, I'd be writing out my class name, that is flower. And okay, first of all, my class name, okay, not my class name, I would simply use that with the help of the object only. So F is my object for my class, and my function is, first of all, I would use out this color function. Okay, same T2 is equal to, here I'll be using the threading dot thread, into the bracket I would be writing target is equal to, and here I'll be using out another thing, that is F dot, and my second function was kind, right? So I just use out that function. Time for making out my third thread. So here I'll be using threading, okay, just 1 second. Okay, so here I'll be using threading dot thread, into the bracket I'll be writing here target is equal to capital F, and my function name now is by. Right, so I just called out all of these 3 functions here. Now what I would just do is that I would be starting out my threads. So that is my last step that I'll be doing. So I'll be writing T1 dot start. Okay, then I'll be writing T2 dot start. Okay, and now I'm writing T3 dot start. So I have just started out all of my 3 threads, right? Now it's my time for running out my program. So here we go. Now the color for the flower is white. Okay, now after 4 seconds it will basically display me the another statement which I would be having here. Okay, so just wait for that. It will actually display you the another statements, whatever it is actually having here. Okay, fine, so let that actually happen, and I just need to go above first of all. So okay, it is time dot sleep. Oh, okay, the color for the flower is white. Okay, first statement, the color for the flower is white. Okay, absolutely fine. Okay, just let me first close this out for a while here. Let me do the terminate thing, and okay, let me apply out some another time here. Let's say I would be giving the time as okay, let me write it out here as, let's say 5, and let me give this as, let's say 10. Okay, and I'm just calling them serial wise only, where I have just called the first one as the color, second one as the kind, and third one as the by, right? And after that I have just started out all of my 3 threads. Right now I would just again try to run it here for a while. Okay, so it is showing me that the color for the flower is white. Okay, my very first statement has been displayed here. Okay, now after this, basically, as I have called out the second function, that the kind of flower, here it goes that, okay, here it is written that event underscore object dot wait. So it will basically wait here for some time. Okay, now basically wait was basically it just wanted to wait here for some time, so that is why it is waiting, right? And after that it will display me the second statement, that is got the flower. Okay, after that it will go for time dot sleep, that is 5, then it will display me both of these statements, right? So this is how it is gonna work, and this is how it is gonna be working, right? So basically now I would just try to run it here, and as soon as I just run it, see, it has basically given me the output that the color for the flower is white, After that, it has got the color, and now just have a look that I just got the rest of the two sentences as well, that this kind of flowers daily and I want to buy this out. Yeah, so these are the four statements which actually we wanted to be displayed, right? These are the four statements which I would really from the bar, right? These are the five statements which we have written inside the functions and that are actually getting displayed here as an output, right? So now I hope very clearly that you have got the idea that how this is actually used, right? How what we just mean from interthread communication and what we just mean from event method, right? So these are the two things with condition, right? So we had already seen regarding the interthread communication with the event, right? Events was the topic which we have seen in the previous video only. Now today we'll be discussing about the condition. We'll be seeing about the interthread communication with the condition, right? So first of all, let me quickly give you a revision that what we just understand from the interthread communication. So that actually means that when we want to when we just require two threads at a particular time, when basically there is some requirement and we want to use two threads at a time, so in that case this interthread communication is the procedure that is used, right? Let me just show you that thing as well here. Okay, just 1 second, let me just show you that out. Fine, this was the one. And okay, so that was event, right? This was the event. Fine. So here basically we had seen regarding sometimes one thread may be required to communicate to another thread depending on the requirements, and this is considered as interthread communication. So when one thread wants to communicate with the another thread which has basically some requirements, so in that case basically interthread communication is required, right? This was the thing that we have already discussed. Now we'll be discussing regarding the condition method actually. Okay, so the condition method is basically the upgradation of that event object which is used for inter-thread communication. Let's say when you want to upgrade something, okay, actually condition is a type of method which is used for the upgradation of that event object which is used for the inter-thread communication. Right, this is the whole idea regarding the condition method. So the condition represents some type of state change between the threads. When you just want to have some state change between the threads, so in that case, this condition is the method, this condition is the function which is actually used in that case. Right, so I hope that first of all you have got an idea that what is the interthread communication, and secondly you have got the idea regarding the condition method, and now it will be more clear to you as soon as we write out the program for this, right? So let's proceed on here. Okay, first of all, what I would just do is that I would be importing out the random module here, because random is a module which I'll be actually using throughout the program. So I just want to import that particular module here, right? After random, I'll be importing that time module as well. So I would just write import time. Fine, these are the two modules which I'll be using throughout my program, random and the time. Fine, now next what I would just do is that I want to use out this function that is condition, right? So in that case, what I can just do is that I can take the threading module, and from that threading module, I can import each and everything which I am having into that threading module, right? And we all know that how to just do that thing, right? So for doing out that thing, I can just write from threading. So from threading, import and asterisk. This is the procedure how we just import out each and every function from the threading module, right? Import from threading, import asterisk, right? This is the way how we just do that out. So I have just written that particular thing here. Okay, this is the idea. Now what I would just do is that I would be making out a class. Okay, so I'll be making out a class, and then within that class I'll be making out the object, writing out the statements and using out this condition method. Fine, now basically what I would just do here is that I would be, okay, let's say my class name is, student. Okay, student is actually my class name. Fine, come on to a new line, and here I'll be making out the function. So first of all, the function is name. Okay, name is actually first function which I am making. So inside the self is automatically passed. Self is one of the constructors which we have here in the class and objects. And as soon as you make out any of the method, or you can just call it as function as well. So when you just make out any of the function inside the class, so basically the self is the module which is automatically passed out here. Okay, you do not need to write that thing on your own. Fine. So the self has been passed. Now what I would just do here is that I would be writing condition underscore condition underscore object dot acquire. I'll be using out the acquire function here. Now what is this condition underscore object? So for that I would just come down here inside my main function. I would just write out my main function, and inside that I would define out this condition underscore. Okay, I would just not define that inside the main function. Let me define it outside only. Okay, I would just write here condition underscore object, and that is actually equal to my condition function which I have here, condition method, which I am actually trying to use out here. Right, so I have just done that same particular thing here, condition underscore object dot acquire. Fine, I would just come out here, I would just use one of my printf statements. Fine, so that printf statement is that let's say name for the student is, and let's say here I would just write, let's say ABC. I just take out some random name, okay? Let's say the name for the student is ABC. Fine, now what I would just do is that with the help of that condition underscore object, I will put out a dot here, and here I'll be putting out the wait function. Okay, so condition underscore object dot wait. This is actually how we just write it. So now here what actually I have done, I had put on my thread into a waiting state. Okay, fine. Come on to a new line, and I would just write here, let's say print, and let's have it just write that name successfully. Okay, okay, that is successfully. Okay, name successfully added. Let's say this is a new admission which has come onto a school, and in that I just shouted the name, that name for the student is ABC. So after that it has basically waited out for some time, and then it printed me that name successfully added. Okay, and now what I would just do is that as I have used out the acquire function above, in the same way I'll be using out the release function, and now I would be just releasing it out. So I would just write here condition underscore object dot release, and I would put out the bracket like this. Okay, so this is how we just made out the very first function. Fine. Now let me make out the second function here. Okay, so first function was name, and let's say now my second function is, let's say okay, let's say marks. Okay, let's say this is the second function. Okay, now what I would just do here is that again I would be starting with the condition condition underscore object dot acquire. Okay, so I just first of all used out this acquired functions to acquire some state. So this condition underscore object dot acquire, after that I can just use out one of my print statements that checking the marks. Okay, whenever we just like go in like for taking any admission in a college or school, so we just always have a entrance test, right? So I would just write checking the marks. Okay, checking the marks. Fine, this statement is completed. Now what I would just do here is that let's say I will be taking a mod random that is time is equal to 0, a function. You can just call this time as a variable. Okay, that's the reason that I have imported a time module above. Okay, now here I'll be writing time. Okay, so time is equal to, I'll be writing here random dot rand int. Okay, random dot rand int, and into the bracket I'll be passing here, let's say 1 comma 20. Okay, so between 1 comma 20 some random marks would be actually coming. Okay, and instead of this time let me just write. Okay, so marks, let's say this is done, and instead of marks let me make it out the appointment underscore time. Okay, when we just go on to take any admission in the school, so in that case we just need to take out first of all appointment, right? Then you can just meet out the principal or the head of that particular school. So let's say this is the same particular thing. Okay, now I would just write here print, and okay, just one another second, right here print, and I would just write here checking the time. Okay, print checking the time, and after that I would just write here one another print statement. Inside that I would just write that time appointed to you is, okay, let me calm down so that you are actually able to see. So the time appointed to you is, and I would just put out these brackets, this closing, and let's say PM. PM, right this. Okay, and I will just put out a dot here, and after this I'll be using out the format function, and inside that format I'll be passing out the variable that is time. Right, so I have just done out that particular thing. Now what I would just do is that I'll be writing condition underscore object dot notify, one of the functions which I have in this threading module, right, that I have just used out here. And after that I just again use condition underscore object dot release. So above I have just acquired that, now I am just releasing that thing here, right? So that particular things I have done out. Now what's this next thing? Next thing, I have already made this condition function, you already used that out. Now I'll be making the object for my class. Okay, now I'll be making some object for my class. Okay, so let's say object for my class. Okay, what's my class name? That is a student, fine. So let's say, okay, 1. Let's say 1 is the name for my object and the class name is student, and put out the brackets like this. Right, class name, oh sorry, object name has already been made. Now I'll be using my threads. I'm making out my 2 threads. So T1 is equal to, I'll be using here thread. Okay. So that is thread, and into the bracket I have target is equal to, and what's my target? So that is 1 dot, and first of all I was having the function which is name, 1 dot name. Okay. My thread 2. T2 is equal to, I'll be writing here thread, in the bracket I'll be writing here target is equal to 1 dot, and here I'll be passing the another one, appointment. Let me come down, appointment time. Okay, appointment time, my another function. Fine. Now I would just start both of the threads. T1 dot start, and after that I have T2 dot start. Right, and now I would just run out my program here. So run, and basically here this will be getting out the answer. Fine, your final output will be displayed onto this window only. Okay, so the name for the student is ABC. Now basically after this it will result be some other things whatever we are actually having here. Okay, so instead of this 20, let me just write it out here as 13. Okay, just 1 second, I just made out the changes. Let me rerun that thing. Okay, fine. And okay, instead of this small t, let me just make, okay, this one is absolutely fine. Okay, let it be like this only. I would run this once again here. Fine, so I just got that the name for the student is ABC, right? Now after that, this name for the student is ABC. After this it is waiting, right? So it is written at condition underscore object dot wait. So as soon as the wait is finished, it will basically give me the second statement, that is name successfully added, right? Now after that it will give me that checking. Okay, add. Okay, just one second, let me close this once again here, because I am just gonna make one more change here. So this has been made as a change here, and now I would just try to run it. Right, so basically here I'll be running out the program. I just want to make one of the changes here. Let me just remove this and let me just write out class underscore obj. Actually, this is the name which actually runs here. Let me just write that here as well, and let me write out that here as well. And we do not put out these brackets whenever we are just calling the function inside the target, this thing. Okay, so let me remove out both of these. Okay. Now I would just try to run this here once again, and here we just get out the whole answer, that is name for the object is ABC, checking the marks, checking the time. So your time appointment appointed to you is 6 p.m. Name successfully added. Right? This is how it will actually run out the things for me. Right? So name for the student is ABC, checking the marks. After that, checking the time. So time appointment appointed to you is 6 p.m. and at last the name is successfully added. Right? So I hope that you have got the idea regarding the interthread communication with condition. Okay, this is how we just use out this condition method for writing out the programs, writing out the things like this. Regarding the interthread communication between the threads using the queue. Okay, now we'll be using out the queue module, and with the help of that module only we'll be seeing the interthread communication between the threads. Right, so we had already seen that what is actually interthread communication. Let me again just give you an overview regarding that particular thing, that what just we actually mean from interthread communication. So sometimes one thread may be required to communicate to another thread depending on the requirements, right? So this is actually considered as the interthread communication. And sometimes one thread may be required to communicate to the other thread, right? So basically some conditions, some requirements actually come in which one thread may be required to communicate to the other one, to the another thread, right? So whenever this condition, the situation actually appears, so that is considered as an inter-thread communication. Right, so I hope I just made this thing again clear to you that what you just meant from inter-thread communication. So basically this is building a thread safe priority queue, right? So now I'm writing out a program for this particular thing. Fine, let me just proceed on here with this particular thing. So what I would just do here is that I would be first of all importing out my threading model. Okay, I'll just write here from threading import asterisk. So from my threading module, I am trying to import all of the functions which actually I have into this, right? So from threading import asterisk, threading is my module which I have, asterisk means to import all of the functions which I have in this particular threading module. So this is the very first statement that I have written. Other than that, I'd be using three more modules. The first module would be that we are using the queue function. Queue. So in that case, I need to import out the queue module. So I will just write import, and this is how the queue goes, right? Import and then the queue, right? This is how it actually goes. So import queue. After that, I have import random module. I have another module which is the random module. Fine, I just need to import that out. So import random. And at last, I have my very third module which I want to import and at this time. So these are all of the three modules which I'll be using throughout my program. So that is why I am importing these three here. Okay, so first of all, I have imported all of the functions from my threading module which I actually have here. Next, I have imported out my queue module because we are going to write out the program for the interthread communication between the threads using the queue, right? Then I have imported out my random module, and at last I have imported out my time module. Right? These are all the things which I have imported. Now I'll be making out another thing. Fine. So let's say I'll be writing out a blank list here. Okay, let's say A is a variable, and this is one of the blank lists which actually I have made here. Fine. Now I would just not use classes here. I will be simply using out my function. So let's say here def. Okay. Now let's say my def is one of the functions, and into this let's say I'm writing out some function name, and let's say that is marks. Okay, def marks. I will put out the bracket here. Now, and inside this basically I would simply be passing out a let's say I will simply be passing out a variable C, let's say. Okay, put out a colon and come to a new line. Now here basically I'll be applying a simple condition that is while true. Okay, while true is my condition that actually I am applying here. Now inside this I'll be taking out the blank list. Okay, not that list. I'll be taking out a module. Let's say that is variable, that is B. Okay, B is one of the variables which actually I have made out here. Now B is equal to, and I'll be using out my random dot randint module. Okay, random dot rand int, and let's say I just give it a range as 1 comma 10. Okay, I just give this random integer as a range of 1 comma 10, and I am having out my random module here. Right now what I would just do here is that I'd be using out a print statement. Okay, single I like this. Okay, print, and inside this print statement I'd be writing that marks, okay, marks obtained are, okay, marks obtained are, put out a comma, and here I'll be using out the variable that is B, in which I have stored my random module and this range that I just want some random integer between this particular range that is 1 to 10. So that I have stored it in the variable as the B, right? So that same I am using this B variable here. Fine. Now I would be using here a small q dot, and I would be just using put, and inside the bracket I would be writing here B. Okay, now what is this q actually? So q is actually one of the variables in which I'll be storing out my q module. Let me show you how will I be do that. So let me just come out here. I just let me write out q is small q is equal to, and here I'll be writing the first of all q dot, and from my q module, that is QUEUE, like this. Okay, and I'll put out the bracket. So this is how, and this is what actually this a character, that is small q, which this actually means, right? So I just put out this small character here as well and use it with the help of a function that is put actually, right? Come on to a new line, and here I'll be printing out that marks, okay, I'll just write here, let's say marks are displayed. that is okay like this displayed, marks are displayed. Okay, I put out the exclamation marks like this. So inside the print statement, I'd be writing that marks are displayed, right? And here I'd be writing time dot sleep, and into the bracket I'd be putting out the time dot sleep, which is, let's say here, 5. 5 means 5 seconds actually. Okay, so b is equal to random dot rand. In that I have put out a random integer 1 comma 10. After that I have printed out a statement that is marks obtained are, put out a comma, and after that I had written out the b. Then I had used q dot put, and into bracket I have put out that variable in which I have stored some random integer. Then coming on to a new line, I had printed out a statement that is marks are displayed, and simply I had put out a time of sleep that is 5 seconds. Now make sure that whatever the number you are giving here inside the bracket, that is automatically taken as a second only. Okay, so the values which you are giving inside this, these are actually the second value. So here I have taken out the time, which is 5 seconds. And this function is actually completed. Now I have to using out a new function here. Okay, so let's say my new function name is obtain. Okay, put out the bracket, and inside this I'll be passing out the same variable which I passed out above, and let's say that is C. Right? Let me put out the colon and come to a new line. So here as well, again I'll be putting out the condition that is while, and write out here as true, while true. Come on to a new line and use out the print statement. So print, and I would be just writing that total, let's say the statement is total marks obtained. Okay, total marks obtained. Fine. Come on to a new line here. And now come on to a new line, and here I'll be using out my print statement once again. Now inside this, what I'll be writing is that I'll be writing marks you got. Okay, marks you got are, and after this I'll be putting out a comma, and now here I'll be using a function that is get. Above I had used the put, right? Now here I'll be using the get, but the variable will actually remain same, that is q dot, and here is the get and the bracket like this. Right, so I've just used out this function, and simply I would just again put out a time for the sleep, and let's say that is again for me as a 5 second. Right, so q is actually already defined. So what I would just do is that, let me just come back this side. Fine, so this is q is defined. Now what I would just do is that I would be making out the thread. So let's say my first thread is t1. Okay, let me leave out a line here. t1 is equal to my first thread. In the bracket I would be writing the target. So my target is equal to, and what is my function, first function name? So that is marks. But first of all, let's say I just write out here obtained 1. Okay, target is equal to obtained comma, and what are the arguments? I will just write here args is equal to, and I will pass here q comma. That is the argument which we have passed out here. What about the t2? So t2 is the same, that is thread. Write out here is target, and what was my function name? That was actually the marks, right? So that is marks, not these brackets. Put out a comma here and pass out the arguments. So AR arguments is equal to, put out the brackets and write here q comma. Right, that is actually done. Right here t1 dot start and put out the bracket like this. After that write down t2 dot start and again put out the brackets like this. So t1 dot start will actually help me to start out my thread, and t2 dot start will actually again help out to start my t2 thread. So we had made out 2 threads. Why we had made it out 2? Because we are having 2 functions, right? My first function which I am having, that is marks, and the second function which I am having, that is obtained. Correct? So I have just used out 2 of the functions. So in that same case, I am making out my 2 threads. Let's say in the case I have used out 3 functions. So for the calling of all those 3 functions, I must have made out the third function as well, right? So this is the whole idea, this is the whole procedure, how we just make out the functions, right? I had made out the marks, and even I had made out the obtained one. Now it's the time for running out of my program. So click on the run, and here basically my program has been run. So I am getting that total marks obtained. First of all, the marks obtained are 4. That is a random value, right? Marks are displayed, marks you got are 4. Total marks obtained are 9. Marks are displayed, marks you got are 9. Now this will actually continue printing me the loop. Actually it's the actual type of running out a loop, right? So it will actually start printing me till it has printed out all of the numbers from here, right? So 4, 5, 9, 10, whatever it is like printing, it will actually start printing me Okay, till that particular point. Now I would just close this out here and click on the terminate. Fine, so this is how actually we just use out this Q module, and this is actually how we just use that out into our program for the threading. So this is how we just do out the inter-thread communication between the threads using the Q, right? So I hope I just made this thing very much clear to you that how you can write out the program for this, right? So this is all for this video. Till then, thank you and take care.